My name is Vorth-Ka, and I am what your species would call, well, you would probably call me several unprintable things right now. But officially, I am a senior strategic analyst for the Hegemony of United Worlds. Was, past tense, because after what happened with the humans, I am pretty sure my career is deader than a Vraxian slug in a salt factory. Let me start from the beginning, because this story, this magnificent, terrifying, absolutely insane story, it needs proper context. You see, we thought we knew humans. Oh, how gloriously, catastrophically wrong we were. 3 months ago, the High Council made what they called the final decision. The humans had been expanding too fast, colonizing too aggressively, making too many friends among the minor species. They were disrupting the natural order. You understand, the careful balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable for millennia. Time to show these upstart primates their place, declared Supreme Commander Vor, his tentacles writhing with what I now recognize was breathtaking stupidity. Release Protocol 7. Protocol 7. Even now, saying those words makes my 3 stomachs churn with something between horror and, well, let us call it professional embarrassment. For 200 years, Protocol 7 had been our ultimate contingency. The nightmare scenario. The thing we would unleash only if faced with complete galactic annihilation. It was not just a weapon, you see. It was an entire ecosystem of death. We called them the Devourers. Self-replicating bioweapons designed by our most twisted scientists. Imagine, if you will, creatures that could adapt to any environment within hours, reproduce exponentially, and had only one biological imperative: consume everything that contained carbon-based life forms. They were perfect, absolutely perfect. In our simulations, they had eliminated every single known species within months. Even us, their creators, would need to retreat to specially prepared safe zones and wait centuries for them to exhaust their food supply and die off. But the humans? Oh, the beautiful, horrible humans were different. We just did not know it yet. The first wave hit the human colony of New Austin. Population 57,000 souls. The Devourers came down like living rain, black drops of hunger that splashed across the landscape and immediately began their terrible work. Within hours, they had consumed the local wildlife. Within days, the forests were gone. Within a week, they had grown into creatures the size of ground vehicles, their forms shifting and adapting as they learned more efficient ways to kill. I watched the satellite feeds with grim satisfaction. Proceed exactly as predicted, I reported to command. Human settlement shows panic responses. Mass evacuation attempts failing due to Devourer adaptation speed. That should have been the end of it. Every other species we had tested this on had died screaming. The lucky ones died quickly. But then something unusual happened. My first hint that things were not going according to plan came in the form of a transmission from New Austin. Not a distress call, mind you. Those had stopped after day 3. This was something else entirely. Attention, alien species currently dropping murder monsters on our planet. Came a distinctly human voice, crackling through the static. This is Colonel Rebecca Martinez of the New Austin Colonial Defense Force. We have a message for you. I leaned forward, expecting the usual pleas for mercy, offers of surrender, maybe some creative threats. Standard procedure for a doomed species. Instead, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Laughter. You beautiful, idiotic sons of bitches, Martinez continued, and I could hear genuine amusement in her voice. Do you have any idea what you just did? You just gave humanity its first real challenge in 50 years. Boys and girls, it is Christmas morning. The transmission cut off, and I sat there staring at my screens in confusion. Did she just thank us for unleashing biological horror upon her world? Sir, my assistant, Grix Nu, looked up from his own monitoring station. The humans on the surface, they are not behaving as expected. Define not as expected, I said, though part of me already dreaded the answer. Well, sir, they appear to be organizing, and sir, they are smiling. A lot. I pulled up the ground surveillance feeds and felt my tentacles go numb with shock. The humans were not running. They were not hiding. They were setting up what appeared to be camps, with banners, and were those barbecue grills. Zoom in on Section 7 Alpha, I ordered. The image resolved to show a group of humans standing around what had once been a devourer, a dead devourer. They had somehow killed one of our perfect bioweapons, and now they were examining it, taking notes. One of them was actually sketching it while another poked at it with a stick. Fascinating adaptation rate, I heard one human say to another. Look at these muscle striations, and the way the mandibles articulate. Gorgeous engineering. Yeah, but check out this weakness here, replied another, pointing to what looked like a joint. Hit it right there with enough force. Whole thing comes apart like a puzzle. I watched in growing horror as they began to dissect the creature with scientific precision, discussing its anatomy like professors examining a particularly interesting specimen. Sir, Grixnor's voice was tight with what I recognized as barely controlled panic. I am receiving similar reports from 17 other sites. The humans are studying the devourers. And sir, they are sharing their findings, all of them, with everyone. That was when I realized we might have made a mistake, a tiny one, a completely insignificant error that might result in the end of everything we held dear. By day 10, the situation had deteriorated beyond my worst nightmares. Or rather, it had improved beyond the humans' wildest dreams. The devourers were still deadly. Do not misunderstand. They had consumed entire cities, adapted to every weapon the humans threw at them, and multiplied at an exponential rate. By all rights, the human species should have been extinct. Instead, I was receiving reports that made me question my own sanity. Human settlements have established what they call devourer fighting leagues, reported my field agent, Krextal. They appear to be competing. Sir, they are keeping score. Keeping score of what? Kills. Sir, they have leaderboards. And sir, they have categories. Most creative kill. Biggest devourer eliminated. Something called style points, for what they term unnecessarily awesome methods of destruction. I stared at the report for a full minute before speaking. Please tell me you are joking. I wish I were, sir. Also, they have developed new weapons, specifically for fighting devourers. In 10 days, sir, 10 days, and they have created an entire industry around killing our ultimate bioweapon. What kind of weapons? Well, sir, there is something called the Devourer Buster Mark II. It appears to be a handheld device that fires crystallized human adrenaline at high velocity. That cannot possibly work. It works very well, sir. The humans discovered that their own fight-or-flight chemicals are toxic to devourers, so they weaponized their fear response. I felt something that might have been respect, if respect could be mixed with absolute terror, and seasoned with the growing certainty that my species had just signed its own death warrant. Sir? Grixnu looked up from his station again. We are receiving another transmission from the surface. Put it through. This time, the voice belonged to someone else. Male, older, with the kind of confidence that suggested he had seen things that would break lesser beings and had enjoyed every minute of it. This is General William Hayes, commanding all remaining human forces on New Austin. To whoever is responsible for sending these things our way, thank you. We have not had this much fun since the Vegran border wars, and that was 30 years ago. My granddaughter just killed her first devourer yesterday. She is 8 years old, and she used a slingshot loaded with concentrated orange juice. Apparently, citric acid gives them indigestion. There was a pause, and I could hear explosions and cheering in the background. Now we figure you folks have more of these things, and we want you to know, we are ready for them. Hell, we are excited for them. See, you just reminded us why our ancestors conquered half a galaxy with nothing but pointy sticks and bad attitudes. So please, by all means, send more. We are just getting warmed up. The transmission ended, and silence filled our monitoring station. Sir Grixnu whispered, "What do we do?" I looked at the tactical displays showing Devourer positions, human casualty reports, and resource allocation charts. According to every model we had, the humans should have been extinct 3 times over. Instead, their population had somehow increased. Apparently, the crisis had prompted what they called a baby boom, because, and I quote from one intercepted communication, "If the universe wants to throw cosmic horror at us, we better make more humans to throw back." The logic was so fundamentally human that it actually made sense in a completely insane way. "Sir?" Grixnu pressed. "Orders?" I stared at the screens showing humans celebrating around the corpses of creatures that had been designed to end civilizations. Somewhere on the surface of New Austin, an 8-year-old girl had just killed something that could have wiped out entire star systems, and her grandfather was teaching her to aim better. "Get me Supreme Commander Vor," I said quietly. "Sir, what should I tell him?" I watched as a group of humans on the screen began roasting something over a fire. It took me a moment to realize they were cooking Devourer meat. They had turned our ultimate bioweapon into a barbecue ingredient. "Tell him," I said, feeling my career prospects crumble like sand, "that we may have made a slight miscalculation." The next few hours were what humans might call a learning experience. For us, they were more like a slow descent into madness, punctuated by the growing realization that we had accidentally declared war on the one species in the galaxy that considered war to be a recreational activity. Supreme Commander Vor, in his infinite wisdom, decided that the solution to our Devourer problem was more Devourers. "Double the deployment," he ordered, his tentacles writhing with the kind of confidence that only comes from being completely insulated from the consequences of your own stupidity. "Triple it. Show these humans what real terror looks like." I tried to explain that the humans were not actually terrified. I showed him the footage of them turning Devourer hunts into sporting events. I presented the intelligence reports indicating that human military recruitment had increased by 400%, because apparently fighting cosmic horror was considered a career highlight. He dismissed it all as propaganda. "Impossible," he declared. "No species could adapt that quickly. Deploy Protocol 7 Alpha." Protocol 7 Alpha was the nightmare version of our nightmare scenario. Instead of thousands of Devourers, we would drop millions. Instead of limiting them to one planet, we would seed entire systems. It was the kind of weapon that could sterilize half a galaxy. "Sir," I said carefully, "perhaps we should consider alternative approaches. Negotiation, maybe? Economic sanctions? Strongly worded diplomatic protests?" Vor fixed me with the kind of look that had historically preceded assignments to very distant, very unpleasant monitoring stations. "Deploy 7 Alpha, he repeated, "and prepare the full invasion fleet. When the Devourers have softened them up, we will move in and claim whatever worlds remain habitable." I filed the orders with a growing sense of doom and what humans would probably call imposter syndrome, because I was increasingly certain that I was not qualified to be witnessing the end of galactic civilization. The deployment of Protocol 7 Alpha went exactly as planned. Millions of Devourers rained down across 17 human worlds. Our bioweapons spread like wildfire through the human colonies, adapting and evolving at an unprecedented rate. And the humans, the beautiful, terrifying, absolutely insane humans, they threw a party, not metaphorically, an actual party, with music, food, decorations, and what appeared to be some kind of competition involving creative ways to kill things that could reshape reality at the molecular level. Sir Grixnu reported, his voice hollow with shock. "The humans have named the event. They are calling it Devourer Season. They have created official rules, established hunting permits, and set up betting pools." "Betting pools?" "Yes, sir. They are wagering on everything. Which colony will kill the most devourers? Which individual will develop the most creative elimination method? Whether anyone can kill a devourer using only items found in what they call a kitchen junk drawer. I pulled up the surveillance feeds again, no longer hoping to see evidence of human defeat. Now I was just trying to understand how they had turned our apocalypse into their entertainment. On New Dallas, a group of humans had built what they called devourer mazes, elaborate trap systems designed to funnel the creatures into kill zones while providing maximum spectacle for observers. They had bleachers, actual bleachers, with concession stands selling something called Monster Munch and Alien Ale. On New Tokyo, the humans had established what appeared to be formal military schools dedicated entirely to fighting devourers. Children as young as 10 were learning advanced xenobiology, tactical analysis, and something called creative problem-solving under pressure, which seemed to involve finding increasingly ridiculous ways to eliminate threats to humanity. But it was New Moscow that truly broke my understanding of how the universe was supposed to work. The humans there had not just killed the devourers, they had domesticated them. How? I whispered, staring at footage of a human child riding something that had been designed to consume solar systems. How is this possible? According to intercepted communications, Rixnu replied, consulting his notes with the air of someone who had given up trying to understand anything. A human scientist named Dr. Angela Torres discovered that devourers respond positively to what humans call belly rubs. Apparently they are, and I quote, just big scary puppies who need proper socialization. I watched as Dr. Torres demonstrated the proper technique for what she called devourer bonding to a group of fascinated children. The creature in question, which should have been dissolving her into component molecules, was instead making a sound that could only be described as purring. They have also discovered, Rixnu continued, that devourers can be trained to perform tasks. The humans are using them for construction, mining, and something called extreme landscaping. Extreme landscaping. Apparently, devourers are very good at removing unwanted vegetation, and rocks, and small mountains. The humans find this useful for expanding their cities. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine explaining this to Supreme Commander Krakvor. The conversation would probably go something like, "Sir, remember our ultimate bioweapon designed to end civilizations? The humans are using them to help with their gardening. Somehow, I did not think that would go over well." But the final blow to my sanity came when I received a transmission directly addressed to me, not to the Hegemony, not to our military command. To me, personally, by name. "Hello, Vorth-Ka," said a human voice, female, middle-aged, with the kind of cheerful confidence that suggested she was enjoying herself immensely. "This is Dr. Sarah Martinez, xenobiologist at the New Austin Research Institute. I hope you don't mind me contacting you directly, but your communications are really not that hard to intercept once you know what to look for." I felt my primary heart stop beating for several seconds. "I wanted to thank you," she continued, "for providing us with such fascinating specimens. The devourers are absolutely remarkable examples of adaptive bioengineering. My team has learned more about evolutionary biology in the past month than we had in the previous decade. We were wondering if you might be willing to share the technical specifications. We have some ideas for improvements." Improvements. They wanted to improve our ultimate weapon of mass destruction. "Also," Dr. Martinez added, "we were hoping you might have more species in your catalog. Not necessarily for warfare, you understand. We are just curious about what else is out there. The universe is so much more interesting than we thought, and you folks seem to have collected quite a variety of dangerous things. We would love to meet them." The transmission ended, leaving me staring at a blank screen and contemplating the very real possibility that my species had just introduced humanity to their new favorite hobby, collecting and befriending things that could destroy civilizations. I turned to Rixnu, who was staring at his own screens with the expression of someone who had just watched reality fold itself into an origami swan and then ask for directions to the nearest black hole. Grix knew, I said slowly. What is our current casualty estimate for the human populations? He consulted his reports, double-checked them, consulted them again, and then looked up at me with eyes that had seen too much. Sir, he said quietly, according to our latest intelligence, the human population has increased by 12% since we began Protocol 7 Alpha. Increased? Yes, sir. Apparently, the presence of the Devourers has convinced more humans to have children. Something about passing on survival genes and making sure there are enough humans to handle whatever comes next. I felt something break inside my mind. Not snap exactly, more like the gentle sound of a soap bubble popping, if soap bubbles contained one's faith in the fundamental nature of reality. Sir, Grix ventured, what are your orders? I looked at the displays showing human worlds that should have been barren wastelands, but instead showed thriving cities, expanded settlements and what appeared to be theme parks built around devourer habitats. Somewhere out there, Supreme Commander Vor was probably planning Phase 2 of his brilliant strategy to humble humanity. Somewhere out there, millions of devourers were being turned into pets, construction equipment and tourist attractions. And somewhere out there, 8-year-old humans were learning that the universe was full of dangerous things, and that the proper response was not fear, but curiosity, creativity, and the occasional celebratory barbecue. Grix knew, I said finally. I want you to prepare a detailed report for Supreme Command. Include everything. The casualty figures, the adaptation rates, the fact that they have somehow turned our weapons of mass destruction into lawn care equipment. Sir, and then I stared at the screens for a long moment, watching humans do impossible things with impossible cheerfulness, and made a decision that would probably result in my execution for treason. And then I said, I want you to prepare my resignation letter. And Grix knew. Make it very, very detailed. I want to make sure that whoever replaces me understands exactly what they are getting into. Because if there was one thing I had learnt about humans in the past month, it was this. They did not just fight monsters. They made friends with them, learned from them, and then asked if there were any more where those came from. And frankly, that was the most terrifying thought of all. My resignation letter was 17 pages long, single-spaced, with footnotes. Grix had done exceptional work documenting every impossible thing the humans had accomplished in the past month. Reading it was like watching someone methodically disassemble everything you thought you knew about the universe, and then use the pieces to build a carnival. Sir, Grix said as I finished reviewing his masterpiece, should I transmit this to Supreme Command? I stared at the document that would either get me executed or promoted to a position where execution would be a mercy. Not yet. First, I want to see how Command responds to the Phase 2 deployment. Because yes, despite everything, despite the reports, despite the footage of humans using our ultimate bioweapons as construction equipment, Supreme Commander Vor had decided to proceed with Phase 2. Phase 2 involved releasing what we called the Void Spawn. If Devourers were our answer to biological threats, Void Spawn were our solution to, well, everything else. They existed partially outside normal space-time, could phase through solid matter, and possessed psychic abilities that could drive entire populations insane with terror. We had tested them on 43 different species. 43 species had ceased to exist within hours of contact. The deployment went perfectly. Thousands of void spawn materialized across human space, their otherworldly forms flickering between dimensions as they prepared to unleash psychological warfare on a scale never before seen. The first reports came in within minutes. Sir, Grix's voice was so flat it could have been used as a construction tool. The humans have made contact with the void spawn. Excellent. What are the initial terror readings? Terror readings are 0, sir. 0? That cannot be right. Check your instruments. Instruments are functioning perfectly, sir. The humans are not afraid. They are, sir, They are trying to communicate with them. I felt that familiar sensation of reality doing something anatomically impossible to itself. Communicate how? Well, sir, apparently someone named Professor Jake Williams has been studying the Devourer incident reports and theorized that our bioweapons might be part of a larger ecosystem. He hypothesized that we might deploy psychic entities next, and prepared accordingly. Prepared how? He learned to speak their language, sir. The words hung in the air like a death sentence for my remaining sanity. Hear what? Professor Williams has been studying interdimensional linguistics for the past 3 weeks. Apparently, it is considered a hobby among human academics. He managed to decode basic void spawn communication patterns and, sir, he is giving them a tour of New Austin. I pulled up the surveillance feeds, because, at this point, watching my species' military strategy crumble in real time had become a form of entertainment. There, on the main screen, was Professor Jake Williams, middle-aged, slightly overweight, wearing what appeared to be a shirt with pictures of small Earth animals on it. He was walking alongside a void spawn, gesturing enthusiastically at various human settlements while the cosmic horror entity floated beside him with what I could only describe as polite interest. And over here, Professor Williams was saying, we have our main agricultural sector. We grow about 40 different food crops, but the real innovation is how we have integrated Devourer-assisted soil preparation with traditional farming methods, increased yield by 300%. The void spawn made a sound like reality being gently stirred with a spoon made of nightmares. Oh, you want to see the industrial sector? Absolutely. Fair warning, though, it gets pretty loud. We have been experimenting with Devourer-powered manufacturing. Turns out, when you feed them the right materials, they can excrete nearly perfect metal alloys. Who knew? I watched in fascination and horror as the professor led the entity that should have driven him insane through what amounted to a guided tour of human ingenuity. The void spawn was asking questions, actual questions, conveyed through psychic projections that Professor Williams seemed to understand perfectly. Grix knew. I said weakly, please tell me this is an isolated incident. I wish I could, sir. We are receiving similar reports from all deployment sites. The humans have apparently been expecting us to escalate to psychic entities and have prepared welcome committees. Welcome committees? Yes, sir. Complete with refreshments, informational brochures, and something called cultural exchange programs. The humans on New Berlin have set up what they call an interdimensional arts festival and have invited local void spawn to participate. I closed my eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to live in a universe that made sense. The memory was getting harder to access. Sir, there is more. Of course there was more. There was always more. The humans have also established diplomatic contact with our command structure. They are requesting a formal meeting. With who? With you, sir. Specifically, they asked for whoever is in charge of the really interesting alien species introduction program, and our communications intercepts indicate they have identified you as the primary strategic coordinator. I felt my career prospects and my will to live engage in what humans might call a knife fight in a phone booth. Both will lose. They want to meet with me? Yes, sir. They have transmitted formal diplomatic credentials and a proposed agenda. They would like to discuss what they call expanded cultural and scientific exchange opportunities. Rexanu handed me a datapad containing the human proposal. I read it twice, then a third time, because my brain kept refusing to process the words in any configuration that made sense. The humans were not asking for mercy. They were not begging for the attacks to stop. They were not offering surrender terms. They were asking if we had more monsters. Specifically, they wanted to know if we had encountered any entities that could manipulate time, control gravity, or exist in more than 4 dimensions simultaneously. They were particularly interested in anything that could provide educational opportunities for human children to learn about physics in a hands-on environment. They had attached testimonials from human scientists, military personnel, and civilians describing how the Devourer and Void Spawn encounters had been incredibly enriching experiences that had opened up entirely new fields of study and provided excellent opportunities for personal growth and community bonding. They had also included a formal thank you note. "Sir," Grixnu ventured, "your orders?" I stared at the diplomatic proposal for several more minutes, trying to find some angle, some interpretation that would allow me to respond in a way that preserved both my species' dignity and my own sanity. Then I made the decision that would define the rest of my career, and quite possibly the future of galactic civilization. "Get me a direct line to Supreme Commander Krakvor," I said, "and Grixnu, start preparing evacuation protocols for all Hegemony worlds within 50 light-years of human space." "Sir, are we retreating?" "No," I said, watching Professor Williams explain sustainable energy production to a being that existed partially outside of reality. "We are running. There is a difference." The conversation with Supreme Commander Krakvor was exactly as pleasant as I had expected, which is to say it was like having a root canal performed by someone who had learned dentistry from watching horror movies. "You want to do what?" Krakvor's tentacles writhed with the kind of indignation that suggested he was working up to either a court-martial or a very creative execution. "I want to establish formal diplomatic relations with the humans," I repeated, because apparently my survival instincts had decided to take a vacation. "Sir, our current strategy is not working." "Not working? We have deployed our two most devastating weapon systems against them." "Yes, sir. And they have turned our bioweapons into pets and our psychic entities into tour guides. Sir, we need to consider the possibility that humanity represents a completely different type of threat than we initially assessed." "Different how?" I pulled up the latest intelligence reports on my personal display and shared them with command. "Sir, in the past week, the humans have established what they call Monster University. They are teaching their children how to identify, communicate with, and if necessary, combat any unknown species they might encounter. They have created entire academic disciplines around what they call applied xenobiology and practical cosmic horror management. So, sir, they are training their next generation to be better at fighting us than their current generation already is. And their current generation just turned our ultimate weapons into educational opportunities." There was a long pause while Krakvor processed this information. "Deploy Phase 3, he said finally. Phase 3. I had been dreading this moment since the day I joined the Strategic Analysis Division. Phase 3 was not a weapon. It was not a bioweapon or a psychic entity or any kind of traditional military asset. Phase 3 was us, the full invasion fleet. Every ship in the Hegemony Navy, carrying every soldier, every weapon, every piece of military technology we had developed over the past 1,000 years. It was the kind of force that could conquer entire galactic sectors." "Sir," I said carefully, "perhaps we should reconsider. The humans have demonstrated remarkable adaptability. They have demonstrated luck," Krakvor snapped. "But luck ends when it meets superior firepower. Deploy the fleet, full military occupation of all human worlds. Show them what real power looks like." I wanted to argue. I wanted to explain that humanity's response to our previous deployments suggested they might not react to invasion in the traditional manner. I wanted to point out that their casualty reports made no mathematical sense, and their adaptation rate violated several fundamental laws of biology and physics. Instead, I said, "Yes, sir," and began preparing what I was increasingly certain would be my species' obituary. The invasion fleet assembled in the Proxima staging area, with impressive efficiency. 12,000 ships, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to nimble fighters, 3 million soldiers, armed with the most advanced weaponry in the galaxy. It was beautiful, terrible, and according to every strategic model we had, absolutely unstoppable. The humans detected our fleet approximately 37 minutes after we entered their sensor range. Their response was immediate, and by now predictably insane. They threw a party, not just any party, According to intercepted communications, they declared a galaxy-wide holiday called First Contact Day and began what they described as the biggest welcome celebration in human history. Sir Grixnu reported, his voice hollow with the kind of despair that comes from watching the universe repeatedly violate its own rules. The humans are decorating their ships, sir, and their stations, and their planets. They have covered everything with what appear to be colorful banners and lights. They are broadcasting what they call festive music on all frequencies. I pulled up the sensor displays and confirmed that yes, humanity had apparently decided to treat our invasion fleet as an excuse for the galaxy's largest block party. They are also requesting permission to send what they call welcome ambassadors to our flagship, Grixnu continued, along with something called gift baskets and cultural exchange materials. Gift baskets? Yes, sir. According to their transmissions, they contain examples of human food, art, literature, and, sir, they have included instruction manuals. Instruction manuals for what? For interacting with humans, sir. Apparently, they have written comprehensive guides covering topics such as basic human social customs, how to avoid accidentally insulting humans, and proper etiquette for interdimensional entities visiting human space. I stared at my displays, watching the most powerful military force in galactic history approach a species that had responded to our arrival by hanging party decorations and preparing gift baskets. Sir, Grixnu asked, should I inform Supreme Commander Krakvor about the gift baskets? I considered this. I imagined trying to explain to my commanding officer that the species he wanted to conquer had prepared welcome gifts for their conquerors. I thought about his likely response to learning that humanity had apparently spent the time between detecting our fleet and its arrival writing instruction manuals for proper invasion etiquette. No, I said. Let him find out for himself. The first contact between our invasion fleet and human forces occurred at 0347 Standard Time, in the outer system of what humans called Sol. Our advanced scouts encountered a small flotilla of human ships that had been waiting for us with what appeared to be infinite patience and industrial quantities of enthusiasm. The human commander, Captain Lisa Torres, opened communications immediately. "Welcome to human space," she said, with the kind of genuine warmth that suggested she was actually happy to see us. "I am Captain Torres of the Earth Defense Force, and on behalf of all humanity, I want to thank you for this incredible opportunity to meet a new species. We have so many questions." Our scout commander, Fleet Captain Vex Lore, responded exactly as his training dictated. "Surrender immediately, or face the consequences of resisting the hegemony of United Worlds." "Oh, that sounds serious," Captain Torres replied. "But before we get to the formal stuff, would you mind if we asked about your ship design? Our engineers are absolutely fascinated by your propulsion systems. Are those gravitic field manipulators? Because if so, we have some theories about efficiency improvements that might interest you." There was a pause while Fleet Captain Vexlor tried to process being asked for technical specifications by the species he was supposed to be intimidating into submission. "I'll what? Your ships," Captain Torres continued enthusiastically. "They are beautiful. We have been studying your engine signatures, and the energy efficiency is remarkable. How do you manage the field harmonics? Our scientists have been working on similar systems, but we keep running into stability issues around the fourth-order resonance cascade." You have been studying our engines?" "Oh yes, we have been tracking your fleet since you entered our sensor range. Absolutely magnificent engineering. We were wondering if you might be interested in technical exchange programs. We have developed some interesting innovations in materials science that might complement your gravitational manipulation technology." I listened to this conversation while feeling my understanding of military strategy pack its bags and head for a dimension where things made sense. Fleet Captain Vex Law, trained in the finest military academies in the galaxy, veteran of 17 successful conquest campaigns, was being systematically disarmed by a human who was treating his invasion fleet like a mobile science fair. "Captain Torres," Vexlor said, with admirable patience. I am here to demand your surrender. Oh, absolutely, Torres replied cheerfully. We can definitely discuss terms. But first, our xenobiology team has some questions about your crew. Are you a silicon-based species? Because our preliminary spectral analysis suggests a fascinating metabolic structure, and we were hoping you might be willing to participate in some cultural exchange activities. Cultural exchange activities? Well, we have prepared what we call introduction packages. Food samples, art, music, literature, that sort of thing. And we were hoping you might share some of your cultural materials with us. Our anthropologists are incredibly excited about this opportunity. By this point, Fleet Captain Vexlor had been reduced to the kind of confused silence that suggested his worldview was undergoing emergency reconstruction. Also, Captain Torres added, we wanted to ask about your bioweapons. The ones you sent earlier? Absolutely fascinating. Our scientists have learned so much from studying them. We were wondering if you had more species in your catalog. Not for warfare, obviously, but for research purposes. The universe is so much bigger and more interesting than we realized, and you folks seem to have encountered quite a variety of life forms. That was when I realized that humanity had not just adapted to our attacks. They had been studying us, learning from us, preparing for us. And now they were treating our invasion fleet like a delivery service for new scientific opportunities. Grigsnu, I said quietly, prepare that resignation letter for immediate transmission. Sir, what about the invasion? I watched as Captain Torres began explaining human food preparation techniques to a fleet captain who had conquered entire star systems, while simultaneously requesting detailed information about hegemony metallurgy, and asking if any of our species might be interested in participating in cultural immersion programs. The invasion, I said, is over. It ended the moment Captain Torres asked about our engine specifications. Sir, Grix knew. Humanity just turned our military commander into a technical consultant. They are not fighting our invasion. They are recruiting it. And that was when Supreme Commander Vorth decided to take personal command of the situation. His flagship, the Inevitable Conquest, was the largest warship ever constructed. It mounted weapons capable of cracking planets, carried enough firepower to sterilize entire systems, and had never encountered an enemy it could not overwhelm through sheer destructive capability. Vorth opened communications on all frequencies, broadcasting to every human world simultaneously. Primitive species. His voice boomed across human space. You have resisted the hegemony for the last time. Surrender now, or watch your worlds burn. The response came not from Captain Torres, but from someone else entirely. Someone whose voice carried the kind of quiet authority that suggested they had been expecting this conversation. This is Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding all human military forces. Supreme Commander Vorth. We have been looking forward to speaking with you. Looking forward to it? Oh yes, we have so many questions about your civilization. But first, we want to thank you for the most incredible gifts you have given humanity. Gifts? The Devourers, the Void Spawn, and now this opportunity to meet you personally. Commander, you have no idea what you have done for our species. I could hear the confusion in Vorth's voice. What I have done? You have reminded us who we are, Admiral Chen said. And for the first time since this entire situation began, I heard something in a human voice that made my blood run cold. Not fear, not anger, not desperation, pride. Commander, for 50 years, humanity has been at peace. We have been exploring, building, learning, growing. It has been wonderful, but we almost forgot something important about ourselves. And what is that? That we are very, very good at impossible things. There was a pause that seemed to stretch across space-time itself. Your bioweapons taught our children that monsters can be understood, befriended, and when necessary, defeated. Your psychic entities showed our scientists that reality is far more flexible than we thought. And now, your invasion fleet is about to learn the most important thing about humanity, which is, "We do not surrender," Admiral Chen said, and her voice carried the weight of every human who had ever looked at impossible odds and decided to try anyway. "We do not give up, and we do not back down. But most importantly, Commander, we do not fight alone." That was when the sensors detected them. Ships. Thousands of ships appearing from behind asteroids, moons, and planets throughout the system. But they were not all human ships. Some of them were Devourer-class bioships, grown rather than built, their hulls pulsing with organic life. Others were void-spawn constructs, existing partially outside normal space, flickering between dimensions. And some of them were ships I did not recognize at all. Ships that suggested humanity had been making friends while we had been making plans. "You see, Commander," Admiral Chen continued, "you taught us something wonderful. The universe is full of incredible species, and most of them just need someone to believe in them, to see their potential rather than their threat level." The fleet surrounding us continued to grow. I was identifying species from across the galaxy. Some we had conquered, some we had destroyed, some we had never seen before, all of them flying alongside humanity. "So here is our counteroffer," Admiral Chen said. "Join us. Join you. The universe is vast, Commander, full of wonders we have not seen, species we have not met, problems we have not solved. Humanity is not interested in conquest or domination. We are interested in exploration, discovery, friendship. And if we refuse..." Admiral Chen's laugh was warm, genuine, and absolutely terrifying. "Commander, you have spent months trying to destroy us with your most powerful weapons. We turned them into educational opportunities and made friends with them. What exactly do you think we will do with your invasion fleet?" The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Fleet Captain Vexlor requesting permission to discuss engine efficiency improvements with Captain Torres. Supreme Commander Krakvor, the most powerful military leader in the galaxy, faced with the largest armada ever assembled, surrounded by species that should have been extinct, commanded by beings who had turned cosmic horror into community outreach programs, made the only decision that made sense. "Admiral Chen," he said slowly, "tell me more about these cultural exchange programs." 6 months later, I found myself serving as the first Hegemony ambassador to the Human Allied Species Coalition. My office was on New Geneva, a human world that had become the unofficial capital of what they called the Universal Friendship Initiative. Outside my window, I could see Devourer cubs playing with human children in a park designed by void-spawn architects. The Hegemony fleet had been retrofitted with human efficiency improvements and was now serving as exploration vessels for joint scientific missions to previously unexplored regions of the galaxy. Supreme Commander Krakvor had become Admiral Krakvor of the human space fleet, and spent his days planning expeditions to search for new species that might benefit from what humans called aggressive diplomatic outreach. My resignation letter had been rejected, and I had been promoted to Director of Interspecies Cultural Integration. My job, apparently, was to help other species understand humanity before they made the same mistakes we had. It was challenging work. Most species found it difficult to accept that humanity's response to danger was curiosity, that their reaction to enemies was potential friendship, and that their solution to impossible problems was to make them into recreational activities. But it was also rewarding work, because I had learned something important about humans, something that every species in the galaxy needed to understand. They did not conquer worlds. They made friends with them. They did not defeat enemies. They convinced them to become allies. And they did not solve problems. They turned them into opportunities. As I finished my daily report and prepared to head home to my apartment, shared with a reformed void spawn, who had developed an inexplicable passion for human cooking shows, I reflected on the question that had started this entire adventure. What happens when you unleash hell on humanity? They throw a party, invite hell to stay for dinner, and ask if it has any friends who might want to visit. And somehow, impossibly, beautifully, Hell always says yes, because that is what humans do. They make the impossible possible, the terrible wonderful, and the end of the world into the beginning of the greatest adventure the universe has ever seen. And frankly, after everything I had witnessed, I was beginning to think that was exactly what the universe needed.